Hello and welcome to another episode of SuggesTing. Today we are diving into what is considered a masterpiece which I have never played. The real question is, will the lack of any kind of nostalgia goggles affect my opinion? Find out today whether or not I'll be suggesting to you The Last of Us Remastered and the Left Behind DLC. Naughty Dog, the company best known for Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, and later on the Uncharted series. But because I'm an absolute wimp, I cannot play any scary games. And before I see in the comments, but Ting, Last of Us isn't even that scary, when you're as much of a wuss as I am, trust me, it is. However, I've heard nothing but amazing things about this game's story, and I have never seen such enthusiasm from my community when I hinted about this game. So I'm throwing my rule aside and diving headfirst into this apocalyptic journey. How you fight in this game depends heavily on the types of enemies you face. With the humans you can sneak, but you know that if you stumble in front of them, you'll be spotted. However, you can't take them down with a good headshot. Or a Joel signature throat punch, because damn! I want to beat him up! Oh! The throat punch! I swear I can feel that. And the one thing you can always rely on is shit during apocalyptic times. You then get the infected, of which there are three main types. You have your fresh-ish infected, and these guys are runners. And you know that they will sprint at your ass the second they hear you, and they aren't completely blind, so they can spot you. These guys are typically found with a few others, so I always opted for a stealthy, silent approach, and I'll kill only who I need to get past, but usually, fan, and they would all rush me, and I'd waste far too many shots trying to get that perfect headshot. Now this next enemy is probably my least favourite that I bump into the most, because largely I don't worry about the runners, because I know that I can deal with them relatively easy in comparison. And what is this thorn in my side? Clickers. I hate everything about them. The way they look, the way they sound, the way they move just gives me the creeps. These things are blind, so everything for them is sound. So more often than not, your encounters with these guys is attempting to sneak past them. I cannot stress how much I hate that sound. And it's a worse version of that film, World War Z, at the end, where the zombie is clicking his teeth. Oh, it creeps me out! But yeah, these guys require not one, but two headshots to take down. I usually sneak past them, but they are punishing as hell. If they appear while you're fighting runners, focus on that damn clicker, because if he gets close enough, he will one-hit kill you. This next one I hated encountering. These nasty bastards called bloaters. People who have been infected a long time. And they are tanks, and I really do mean tanks. The infection has now provided them with an armor. If they get close enough, they will one-hit kill you in a very gruesome fashion. So much so that the camera cuts away when it's about to get really nasty. And yes, these guys have range. They can't exactly chase after you, but you certainly cannot be stationary, and I guarantee you, at least in the early stages, you'll use a lot of supplies you've been hoarding to make sure this thing drops and stays that way. What can you fight with, you say? Well, on your journey through, you will pick up a lot of weapons. Will you have enough ammunition? Well, that's up to you. This game has a crafting system which can let you craft various weapons to get you out of a pickle when the going gets rough. You can craft the following: ships, medkits, IEDs, smoke bombs, Molotov cocktails, and I will count this too, but you can also upgrade your melee weapons with a one-hit KO ability which can be crafted back after if you have the materials. And that's the important bit, if you have the materials. This game heavily encourages exploration in the aspect that you will have to weigh up the pros and cons. Yes, you can explore and maybe get more items, but what enemies are there? Will I end up using more supplies than I gain because I decided to head over there? And there were humans or some clickers I couldn't sneak past. I always hated when the game made me break a shift to get into a room, but it was almost always worth it for the amount of loot you could get back. this story has one of the most immediate, heartbreaking moments I have ever experienced. And maybe the closest comparison I have is Ori and the Blind Forest, where it's an immediate pull on your heartstrings. You start off as Joel's daughter, Sarah, and they immediately show off this close family dynamic. She waits up for him, buys him a present, and you can really see the love between these two. And for later reasons, it's very important to remember this dynamic. All hell starts to break loose, and you get in the car with Tommy, and everywhere is utter chaos. People fleeing, cars crashing, infected attacking, and the police are attempting to control it, but obviously, how the hell do you do that when there is mass panic? After getting through that mess of a town, your path is blocked by a soldier, who has orders he questions, which certainly sounds like kill them both. And Joel cannot turn away in time, and Sarah is hit, seeing her die, confused and scared as to why it's all happening, and Joel's reaction, my god, it's bloody heartbreaking. Joel is saved by Tommy, and then it moves to him waking up 20 years later. You can definitely tell Joel lives that memory almost every time he sleeps, and it has without a doubt shaped him into what he is today. I feel it would be pretty accurate to say that Joel is just surviving at this point, and it affects a lot of the decisions he makes, and you will see that as the story progresses. You then meet Tess, who is clearly a very strong figure in his survival life, and you go on a mission to get the guns you owed after some guy double-crosses you. And this is where you start to see the brutality of this world. They aren't afraid to snap a bone or deal some pain to someone who has something they need or double-crossed you. This guy owed you a payment to someone else, and you learn that it was to a group of rebels/insurgents/freedom fighters called the Fireflies. When you get to where the Fireflies should be, you find what's left of them. And even then, Marlene is looking weak. She's been shot, but she promises the weapons and more if they do a job for her. Get this girl called Ellie to the Capitol building, which involves breaking out of the quarantine zone and then going past the long-abandoned sections of the city, which is where you're guaranteed to bump into the army and the infected. Now here comes a big twist on your way over. You're caught by the army and they test you for the infection, and Ellie is infected. However, she insists she was actually bitten weeks ago, meaning she's immune because people normally turn within 2 days at most. After deciding to just get on with the job at hand, you carry on with the journey to the Capitol building. But when you get there, the Fireflies have been found dead, and this honestly becomes a theme throughout the game. This could be to emphasize just how much the government is clamping down on them, but it's time for heartbreak number 2. Joel's anchor in his life, Tess, was bitten earlier and refuses to turn into the infected. So she makes one last stand to hold them off and insists that Joel takes Ellie to the Fireflies because she's already feeling and looking worse than her, so her immunity must be true. This is where the story really ramps up, and I will summarize to keep it sweet for you guys who, like me, held back on experiencing it or just wasn't able to buy it at the time. Each area seems to have one end path, but it is possible to hit dead ends, and due to the crafting system, exploring is definitely encouraged. And although the path usually has one exit, so to speak, there can be a few ways to get there, but in most cases it's often very linear. The environments can be relatively diverse with anything from urban cities, towns, sewers, and forest environments. However, I did personally get fed up of travelling in abandoned buildings at night, but that wasn't because the game overdid it, but because I was trying not to piss myself the whole time. Throughout this journey, you will meet a few interesting mini-stories which can help shed light on the situation years after the breakdown of society, and what it's like to live outside of the government-controlled zones. However, it is very clear that the primary focus here is Joel and Ellie, and this whole father-daughter dynamic, because Ellie is the same age as Sarah when she died. But they also have very similar personalities. Joel resists a lot, and it's very obvious, but you can see the relationship forming with Ellie's blunt-like charm and very open to call anything out. What makes this even more weird for Joel, she seems like a young Tess. Now, as to not give too much of the story away because I cannot emphasize just how good it is, we will now enter the spoiler zone. So be sure, if you would like to not be spoiled, to skip to the time frame below. Now that Joel has accepted that he'll be taking Ellie to the Fireflies, to the west, in hopes of finding them, and therefore helping find a cure for humanity. You'll meet some interesting characters such as Henry and his older brother with a rather sad ending after Henry turns. You meet Tommy, Joel's brother, and how he and his community are thriving with a hydro dam and the whole little village with movie nights, for God's sake. Joel insists Tommy should take Ellie to the Fireflies due to his past connections, but then Joel and Ellie fall out with her bringing up Sarah, and Joel saying he isn't Ellie's dad, but Ellie runs away, and Joel, with Tommy, set out to find her. And I think this is where he realizes just how much he cares for her, and palms it off as, "Oh, I'm afraid of your wife, Tommy." You get to the university, and yet again, what happens? The Fireflies are dead, or abandoned this place. There may be hope because they have one last place where they could be. Then on your way out, bandits show up. And as you're escaping, Joel fell and landed on a pole of iron, and man, it looked really painful. So much struggle, and this is where Ellie shines, and I really mean shines. She defends you, taking on remaining bandits with a little help from Joel, but in his weak state, he can barely mumble a sentence together. He collapses on the way out, and then it skips some time. It'd be safe to assume a couple weeks at most. Joel is still barely alive, but Ellie is providing. She is hunting and keeping him going, but as she is hunting, she then bumps into two people who want the deer she shot, and she agrees, so long as they deliver medicine. Now this makes all games look pale in comparison. Ellie, as an AI helper, is amazing. You get caught in a pickle, and she jumps on their ass with a knife. And this guy who gives me the creeps, very much a T-Dog vibe, the one from Prison Break. And surprise, surprise, he's a bad guy. And a terrible AI helper. It was his men we were killing in the university, and he certainly knew who we were because how many groups meets the description of a girl and an older man like Joel, who's in what? I'm assuming late 40s, early 50s? Absolutely kicking ass, but she, being savvy with a gun, gets away and with the medicine. However, the next morning, only possible hope is to lead them away because they've tracked her. And the game, seriously, can we stop killing off our horses? I am constantly paranoid that this will happen thanks to Red Dead 2, and now this too? I was heartbroken. Again. Now let's try and tie this end up. Ellie is captured, and Joel suddenly wakes up. He is hurt, but in a much better state than before. The game, very interestingly now, swaps you between these two as Joel tries to find Ellie, and as Ellie tries to escape. After what is a rather odd boss fight, Joel is also making his way through the camp, and he finds Ellie after she absolutely destroys him, and he is there to bring her back from these traumatic events that just happened. They then find where the Fireflies are, and Marlene is very much of a, "Wow, you came so far? Okay, thanks, bye. And by the way, to get a vaccine, we will have to kill her, and if you come back, we'll kill you." And this guard's name, who's escorting you out, just sticks with me. Ethan. Ethan! What a dick. Does anyone else get that urge when an NPC goads you like, "Hey, make a false move and I'll kill you"? Yeah, watch me, bitch. And Joel gets absolutely savage, killing all, and I mean all in his way, and gets Ellie back and saves her from the doctors, and she wakes up on the car journey. And what makes this interesting for a sequel is Joel lies and says there are dozens like her and a cure cannot be found. Left Behind is a mini DLC which takes place during two events. The brief period they skipped as Joel was healing, and a few weeks before the game takes place, showing how Ellie got bit. And it's very interesting to see what happened during these times, and sheds a little bit more light on what happened. I won't go too much into it, but what I can say is, play it. It's very well done. Despite a small section of the internet's moaning, nothing feels forced in the slightest, and seeing Ellie's relationship with Riley, yeah, they aren't dating, but there is certainly a dynamic there. I have only one complaint, and that is I would love to have seen Ellie's reaction to being immune as her friend loses it, and seeing that painful "I'm sorry" moment where she has to kill her friend or lose the courage and running away, and that would have been very interesting to see. All in all, The Last of Us is an absolutely mesmerising journey, which will certainly tug on your heartstrings. As someone who cannot play horror, I never once felt cheaped out by any set jump scares. However, the game does conveniently wait for you to jump into a room of no return before telling you By the way, there are enemies nearby. I digress. I'm getting distracted. The Last of Us on normal, including the DLC, took me roughly 14 hours to beat. However, it was completely worth it. And at no point did the game feel padded out for the sake of adding time to the experience. So yeah, I'm suggesting to you, you play The Last of Us Remastered and the Left Behind DLC.
What up? Yeah? What up? You're next, buddy! Land on this car!
Aw, man. Man, good hope.